evening. I'm Haley Ficasello, and this is Englebrook Independent News Federal Crime Report, where we examine major criminal cases moving through the United States federal court system. Tonight, we focus on significant prosecutions and sentencing decisions across American Midwest, where federal investigators and prosecutors are confronting organized crime, large-scale drug trafficking, corruption, weapon violation, child exploitation, and international cartel activity. Our report tonight takes us to Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, Missouri, Illinois, and Arkansas. These cases represent the work of federal prosecutors, investigators, and judges seeking accountability in some of the most serious crimes prosecuted in federal justice systems. We begin tonight in Minnesota with a shocking attempt to bribe a federal juror in one of the largest pandemic fraud cases in the United States history. A Minneapolis man has been sentenced to federal prison after participating in a brazen attempt to bribe a juror during the first trial tied to a massive Feeding Our Future pandemic fraud investigation. Federal prosecutors say Abdoukan Fareh helped coordinate the scheme while his own brothers were defendants in the trial. According to court documents, the bribery attempt occurred in April of 2024 during the first trial involving the Feeding Our Future fraud scheme, a case that federal investigators say involved the theft of hundreds of millions of dollars in federal pandemic relief funds intended to feed children. 7 defendants were on trial before U.S. District Judge Nancy Brazel. 2 of those defendants were brothers. Federal prosecutors say Farah helped identify and target juror number 52. He conducted surveillance on the juror's home and sent a map showing where the juror parked during the jury service. A co-conspirator, Landon Ali, was recruited to physically deliver the bribe. Farah drove Ali to juror's home and recorded videos of attempted payoff. Before the delivery, Farah purchased a screwdriver at a Target store and removed the license plate from the rental vehicle, used in operation in an effort to avoid detection. On the night of June 2nd of 2024, Ali delivered a gift bag filled with cash. The bag was handed to a relative of the juror, along with a promise of additional money if the juror voted to acquit the defendant. Instead, the attempted bribe was reported to the court, triggering a federal investigation. After learning the attempt had been exposed, Farah deleted encrypted messages app Signal from his phone to destroy evidence. But investigators had already begun piecing together the conspiracy. Farah was sentenced by the U.S. District Judge Eric Tostrud to 57 years in federal prison, the high end of federal sentencing guidelines. Judge Tostrud said that the attempt to corrupt federal juries struck at the heart of justice system. Poorly functioning juries are the core of our criminal justice system. He also praised the juror who refused the bribery. In another major case in Minnesota, a Mexican national living in the United States illegally was pled guilty to operating a massive methamphetamine distribution operation. Federal prosecutors say Mercado Carpeta distributed nearly 900 pounds of methamphetamine. The investigation began when he sold a pound of meth to an undercover officer. Police surveillance then observed multiple additional drug deals. Several days later, investigators watched as he removed 2 garbage bags filled with drugs from his pickup truck. Officers later stopped a Jeep carrying the bags. Inside were 250 pounds of methamphetamine. A search of the pickup truck revealed another 630 pounds hidden in the truck bed. In total, investigators seized almost 900 pounds of methamphetamine designed for distribution. 2 members of the Milwaukee street gang known as Wild 100s have been convicted in federal murder for hire cases. Prosecutors say Ronald Bowman and Lawrence Turner arranged the killing of a man believed to have connections with the rival gang. Evidence presented during the trial showed the pair offered $10,000 for the murder. The victim, identified in the court records as NB, was shot more than 24 times in April of 2021. Both defendants were convicted of murder for hire resulting in death, conspiracy to commit murder for hire, discharge a firearm during a crime of violence. Bowman was also convicted of a firearm trafficking violence, witness tampering, and obstructive of justice. Both men now face mandatory life sentence in federal prison. Prosecutors also revealed that the defendants have previously taken part in a pandemic unemployment fraud conspiracy, stealing millions of dollars in federal aid. Authorities say the stolen money helped fund the murder plot. A federal grand jury has also indicted 27-year-old Zachariah Barafa. He is charged with transportation of child pornography across state lines. If convicted, he faces 5 to 20 years in federal prison. Officials emphasize an indictment is only an allegation, and the defendant is presumed innocent unless until proven guilty. In Iowa, a convicted felon responsible for distributing fentanyl and heroin linked to 2 fatal overdoses has been sentenced to 37 years in federal prison. Prosecutors say Cody Kanzi Ditmar began selling heroin and fentanyl almost immediately after being released from federal custody in June of 2023. Investigators say Ditmar and his wife sold a mixture of heroin, fentanyl, and the animal tranquilizer xylazine to a couple in Marin, Iowa. Both victims died from overdose shortly after using the drug. Despite the death, Ditmar continued trafficking narcotics throughout the Cedar Rapids area for another year. Chief U.S. District Judge C.J. Williams sentenced him to 420 months in prison. Because of the federal system has no parole, Ditmar will serve nearly the full sentence. A separate case in Sioux City resulted in an 8-year federal prison sentence for Fred Gorell, a truck driver from Texas. Investigators say Gorell sexually exploited a runaway foster child and recorded child pornography involving the victim. Authorities discovered the crime after the missing child was dropped off at a sheriff's office. A forensics investigation later uncovered videos and images of abuse on Gorell's phone. In Michigan, a repeated offender described by a federal judge as a very serious danger to the public has received the maximum possible sentence. Maurice Ray, Jr. of Grand Rapids was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for illegally possessing a firearm. Evidence at the trial showed Ray kidnapped his girlfriend, dragged her from the moving vehicle, and led police on a high-speed chase exceeding 90 miles per hour. During the pursuit, Ray threw a loaded 9mm handgun from the vehicle. Investigators later recovered the firearm with Ray's DNA on the trigger. In another Michigan case, a former orthodontist has received one of the longest sentences handed down in the district this year. Thomas Sharon, 44, was sentenced to 60 years in federal prison. Investigators say Sharon exploited at least 18 children online between 2019 and 2024. The victims ranged between 12 to 17 years old. Authorities discovered the crime after a victim in North Carolina reported being exploited on Snapchat. In Ohio, federal judges handed down a significant prison sentence in 2 separate cases. Repeat sex offender Daniel Nutt received 122 months in prison for downloading and distributing child sexual abuse material. Investigators discovered more than 230 illegal images, including material involving children under 12. Nutt had previously served 7 years in prison for similar cases. In another Akron case, Cedric Thomas, a career offender, was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Police seized 1,400 grams of methamphetamine, fentanyl, cocaine, and 2 firearms. Investigators say Thomas attempted to flush drugs down the toilet when officers executed a search warrant. A Michigan City man, Dontel Grant, has been sentenced to 66 months in federal prison. Grant fled from a traffic stop, led police on a pursuit, and then was later captured carrying a loaded pistol with a 20-round extended magazine. Because of prior felony convictions, he was prohibited from possessing a firearm. In Hampton, Indiana, Vernon Tate II received 87 months in prison for distributing child sexual abuse material on an encrypted message platform. Investigators say the images included infants and very young children. Federal prosecutors say Scotty Starks Jr. led a major methamphetamine trafficking conspiracy. Investigators determined he was responsible for distributing more than 5 kilograms of methamphetamine and 1 kilogram of cocaine. Starks also illegally possessed a firearm. He was sentenced to 200 months in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. In Louisville, authorities dismantled a multi-million-dollar money laundering operation tied to drug trafficking. Jose Malgon Castro used 3 grocery store money transfer business to funnel drug profits into Mexico. Investigators say more than $1.9 million was laundered for drug trafficking organizations. Castro was sentenced to 70 months in prison, ordered to forfeit $516,800 and fined $30,000. 2 accomplices were also sentenced. In Kansas City, Alshie Forbes pled guilty to fraudulently obtaining more than $426,000 in Paycheck Protection Program loans during the pandemic. Investigators say she submitted false payroll records for 2 companies she owned. Prosecutors also say Forbes participated in additional fraudulent PPP applications totaling more than $1.3 million. She faces sentencing later this year. A Honduran national was sentenced for 2 years in federal prison after illegally re-entering the United States and possessing a firearm. Police also discovered methamphetamine, heroin, and drug distribution equipment in the vehicle. In one of the most significant indictments this month, federal prosecutors in Chicago have charged an alleged boss with the Sinaloa cartel. Authorities say Jesus Omar Ibra Felix, also known as El Chuda, led an armed security unit protecting the sons of the Joaquin El Chapo. Prosecutors say the group supplied machine guns, imported methamphetamine and fentanyl, and carried out violent operations in Mexico. Felix faces terrorism, drug trafficking, and firearm charges that could carry life in federal prison. He is not currently in custody. Also in Chicago, a convenience store owner has been sentenced to 4 years in prison for defrauding the Women and Child Nutrition Program. The scheme involved more than $19 million in fraudulent WIC check redemptions. The judge also ordered $8.8 million in restitution. In Arkansas, a Dominican national has been sentenced to 70 months in federal prison for transporting cocaine. Troopers discovered 7-kilo-sized bundles of cocaine hidden in a duffel bag during a traffic stop. Investigators later determined that the suspect had driven from New York to Texas to obtain drugs. Another defendant, Juan Carlos Cortez Narago, was sentenced to 4 years in prison for possession of a firearm while illegally in the United States. Police found the weapon in a stolen vehicle during a traffic stop. These cases represent just a portion of the federal prosecutions unfolding across the United States each week. From drug trafficking and organized crime to public corruption and crime against children, federal investigators say their work continues around the clock. For Englebrook Independent News, I'm Haley Ficasello. Thank you for watching tonight's Federal Crime Report. Stay safe.